Welcome. I'm Doug Woodward. It's time for another edition of Prophecy in the News. Today in our studio we have the pleasure of having author, researcher, lecturer, syndicated radio talk show host, Paul McGuire. Paul, great to have you once again in our studios.
Once again, a privilege.
Absolutely great to have you here to talk about a new book that you have written along with Troy Anderson.
Yes.
Great writer. You all wrote together a book called The Babylon Code, which was published over a year ago.
Yeah.
You have a new book, though, which we're going to talk about today, Trumpocalypse, kind of a mouthful. For those listeners or viewers that haven't seen us talk about this before, give just a minute or so of what the book Trumpocalypse is about. Why did you write the book?
Well, Troy and I were praying and talking, and we had a real burden from the Lord that people needed answers about who Donald Trump was specifically. And so we compiled this book, and it's it's a very fast reading book. I mean, you can read it quickly.
It's full of information, but it is easy to read because it's really well written.
Right. And Troy did an incredible job because he's a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist and documentation. So nobody can read the book and say, "Oh, these guys are making it up." We have a firewall of MIT professors and everything else.
Oh yeah, the footnotes is 20, 30 pages of footnotes by itself. Right.
So the basic message of the book is that why is Donald Trump the most unique president in American history and one of the most unique leaders in the world, where the entire mass media, which is owned by 6 globalist corporations, the late night comedians on cue every night, and excuse me, I want to barf. Okay, at least Johnny Carson and the old late night talk show comedian guys, they had class.
Right.
They didn't get out there and like with no brains at all alienate half their audience.
Right.
They wanted to at least make the Republicans and Democrats happy. That's how you build an audience.
Right.
These guys who have about 1/8 of the talent of Carson just take I don't want to make a gun joke, but
right.
I am convinced from our study of scientific mind control and Trumpocalypse is that they put that there to capture the audience that doesn't really do critical thinking, and in that stage before sleep when people want to laugh and relax, then they insert that political programming.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that as Americans, if we don't realize that television is a mass programming tool, we are absolutely being foolish.
Absolutely.
It programs us all to, as I sometimes joke, unless you hear about it on CNN, well, it can't be true.
Exactly.
Well, of course, the whole phenomenon of fake news says that premise, which seems to be characteristic of American culture, it's got to be on cable news, otherwise it can't be true. Well, it turns out that finally a lot of people are waking up and saying, wait a second.
Yeah, thank God.
The fake news is fake news. It's media. The media is in cahoots with the giant corporations and the 5 global conglomerates and so forth. So we live in this, and this is the chapter we're talking about in the book, this sort of great deception.
Yes.
I'll read just a couple of Bible verses here. Jesus warned for false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. That's Matthew 24:24. The Apostle Paul also warned of false teachers, false apostles, deceitful workers, and servants of Satan who, quote, disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. That's 2 Corinthians 11:15. The Bible further warns of apostia or apostasy, right? A falling away. 2 Thessalonians 2:3, which of course is connected with the end times, the last days. So we live in kind of this age of deception, don't we?
Absolutely, and those verses that we have listed in Trumpocalypse, we talk about the spiritual danger for every American or wherever you're listening to this TV program of being spiritually deceived by this great deception. But when you merge that with technology and the modern science of scientific mind control or social engineering or propaganda and persuasion, you have a deadly toxic force. As one of the people interviewed in the book, Professor Noam Chomsky, he wrote an article.
A very strong leftist.
Yes,
but yet sometimes he says some great truths too,
Right.
doesn't he?
And he wrote a book and an article called Manufacturing Consent, in which he said, in today's society, through mass media, the mass media can actually manufacture the idea for people to hate Trump or like Trump,
Right.
just through scientific advertising techniques.
Yeah. In this program today, I want us to talk a bit about, we'll try not to get too
Right.
intellectual, but we want to talk about some of the thoughts, the thought ideas, some of the poison intellectually that was developed really during the 20th century.
Oh, good.
All right, and how that has a bearing and is actually motivating very consciously. That is sort of the strategy. The tactics are doing this
Yes.
sort of subtle mind control, sometimes not so subtle, but for the masses, subtle
Yes.
mind control. So let's talk first, just to set the stage. Let's talk about what was once called by Marilyn Ferguson the Aquarian conspiracy. Just a few characteristics of it that you all cite. Ministers not teaching the whole counsel of God's Word. Prophecy experts estimate that 7 out of 10, perhaps as many as 9 out of 10, pulpits in America are largely silent about Bible prophecy. Well, that's so true. Today, 100 million American church members have little or no understanding of Bible prophecy. That's what the sort of New Age,
Right.
New Age evangelicalism
Yes.
has even created, is a lack of understanding the whole counsel of God.
Right.
The Scripture being 25% prophecy,
Right.
much of it about the end times.
Right.
It's a tremendous lapse of teaching. A drop in personal family Bible studies, minimal exposure to biblical truths in the media, especially Christian television and radio. In recent decades, we've seen less teaching of the whole counsel of God on Christian media in favor of entertainment-style programming.
Yeah.
Indoctrination by Hollywood, the media, secular education system, Common Core.
Right.
And then this sort of real intellectual thing that this group UNESCO
Oh, yes.
from the UN has been involved in, and actually spreading sort of subliminally almost a sort of universal spirituality.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
is backing all this up. So let me pause. You quote a friend of ours, Billy Crone, pastor of Get a Life Ministries, Oprah Winfrey. I'm just kind of feeding you some of the talking points. Speak to these if you would, and talk a little bit about this deception that we are being inundated with in popular culture.
Well, what's interesting, and what Troy and I discovered in researching Trumpocalypse, is there's this collision in the soul of the average American. On one hand, this propaganda is going on, and you alluded to it. You have singers like Bono talking the praises of a UN global
Right,
government,
right.
going back to John Lennon. Imagine there's no
Yep.
heaven. I was watching the Olympics in Korea the other night, and they were singing "Imagine There's No Heaven."
Yeah.
Well, as you know, watching this program, that's a song about no heaven, no God, no
Right.
biblical
Nothing to
truth.
cause division.
Right,
Right.
right. And it's a manifesto for the New World Order. So the thing is, Trump is in conflict with the New World Order. But here's the problem, and you nailed it when you asked this question. Here's the problem. Millions and millions of Christians have been indoctrinated, as you
Right.
talked about, into believing a lie. And the lie is that if we have a one world government and a one world religion and a one world economic system, we're all going to get along, no more mass shootings, we're going to sing Kumbaya, hug each other, share brown rice, we can all sleep with each other's wife, dog, cat, or robot.
And
you
eat
know what I'm
healthy
saying?
foods.
And eat healthy foods,
Yes,
right?
right,
Recycles, right?
Right.
Okay, but it's all a lie, because every society built on the foundation of secular humanism, going back to what you referred to, and we talk about in detail in the book, Trumpocalypse, the Frankfurt School of Marxism in the 1920s, as you know, and we discuss in the book, they were a bunch of hardcore KGB-trained professors who migrated from Moscow to Germany, and they believed in a communist revolution in America through political correctness, using terminology and words. And as you know, they targeted the destruction of the family, the destruction of Christian marriage, the destruction of Christian values, the destruction of nationalism, and the destruction of patriotism. All of
It
which
sounds
done-
like the Marxist Manifesto.
It is
The
the
Communist.
Marxist.
Yeah.
Right, you got it.
Right.
It is the Marxist Manifesto.
Right.
They just recycled it.
Yeah.
And Trump is for those things, the family, marriage, because those things, here's the lie that the millennials don't get. And far from being imprisoning and oppressive forces, Christianity, Christian marriage, traditional moral values, nationalism, and patriotism are pillars of freedom and economic prosperity. Hey, wake up and smell the coffee. How many nations have a dream that people want to get in on? The only nation is America. There's an American dream in America that everybody from every nation in the world wants in on. Why? Because America was built, for crying out loud, on the foundation of biblical truth.
Yes.
But we have Marxist professors, and when I see these Marxist professors on television, and forgive me for being straight to the point, I feel like I'm looking at a man who has had a lobotomy. There is not a single firing of a neurological impulse in his dead brain. He's mouthing the platitudes of this maniac, Karl Marx, whose philosophy was directly responsible for the killing of 250 million people by death, starvation, concentration camp, and slaughter in the last 100 years under the name of communism and Marxism.
Now this is, and you're well aware of this because you had a chance to spend some time with a Christian intellectual, Francis Schaeffer, who talked, really this is kind of the intellectual part of it, is that sort of the thought bombs, as Hal Lindsey once called them, that sort of cascaded down,
Yes.
you know, through time. And you get, you know, to Nietzsche and this concept of the Übermensch, and then you go from, you know, Nietzsche and Marx, and then you get one pivot, it goes to Lenin and then Stalin, and one pivot goes to Hitler and fascism and so forth. But they all sort of stem from this same totalitarianism, collectivism. The softer politically correct word is, liberalism or
Yeah,
progressivism,
right.
Yeah, but it's really just masked that
Exactly.
way, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, no offense, they'll probably be watching this show, but all my
Right.
family members, for the most part, are liberals, ACLU, carrying card members and stuff. But, you know, and they're intelligent people, but they just don't get it. And see, Trump is the surprise factor.
Yep.
Everybody thought it was over for America. Hillary would win. She would. I'm speaking with very dark sarcasm. She would behead the Christians as Jezebel did in the time
Yeah.
of Baal.
Yep.
That's sarcasm.
Yep.
And she that anti-Christian movement would explode. They would destroy capitalism. They would forcibly redistribute the wealth, and the American dream, we believe, was over. They were going to smash it into 1,000 different pieces. But Trump, a billionaire, and I did research on his background. The media lies. I grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens. He grew up in Jamaica Estates. It's one subway stop away in Queens.
Right.
Jamaica Estates is not Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better than a middle-class neighborhood.
Right.
They act like he was born as a king. He's not born as a
silver
king.
spoon.
Exactly.
You
right.
know, well, the reason he's rich is because his dad gave him
Exactly.
$1 million, which anyone, like I work with entrepreneurs and so forth and starting up companies,
Right.
$1 million isn't very much. You can waste $1 million in a hurry.
And
But he didn't waste it. He turned it into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Basically.
And look at this. Donald Trump has been in office a very short period of time, and he has posted profits, stock market increases, although the Fed is trying to sabotage him because they're globalists.
Right.
But jobs, manufacturing plants coming back, a chance for the American dream. I don't know what all you millennials are whining about. Trump is your only ticket back to paying off your college loan and having a decent career. So he represents, even though he is an imperfect man, and we
Right.
stress this in the book, Trump is imperfect. He's got a salty past. We're not claiming he's a
Absolutely.
choir boy.
That's right.
But he believes in the important things: freedom, America, free enterprise, honor, integrity, telling the truth, and the American way of life. You know, today, if Superman was running for president, what was it? Truth, justice,
The American way. Yeah.
They'd kill him.
Yeah.
The late night comedians would kill him.
Yeah,
Or Kathy
yeah.
Griffith would have a head of Superman being decapitated.
Yeah.
Trump is a hero,
Yeah.
and our media has used the mind control and the
Yeah.
advertising techniques to take a genuine American hero and twist him. And I find that personally vulgar and disgusting.
It is. They certainly. We see them certainly wanting to characterize him more like a Hitler.
Yes.
That he appeals to simpletons,
Yes.
people like you and me,
Right.
the deplorables,
Yes.
right, and that the intellectuals on the left coast and the right
Right.
coast, basically they're better than us.
Yes.
And so they're the choir,
Yeah.
singing to the preachers of progressivism.
Exactly.
You might say. Yeah, and so very much. Let me read a quote here, and we'll
Sure.
kind of bring this part of the program to a conclusion. This is a quote. This shows, I think, what we I was a philosophy major. In philosophy, call a nihilism, really a darkness or a sense that there really is no meaning, no real value
Right.
in the world. Humanity means nothing. It doesn't matter if evil happens. It doesn't matter. This is an interesting quote that you all have. In 1981, England's Prince Philip, husband of Queen Elizabeth II, and a prominent globalist, told People magazine that overpopulation is humanity's biggest long-term threat to survival.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? Quote from Prince Philip, "If it isn't controlled voluntarily, it will be controlled involuntarily by an increase in disease, starvation, and war."
Right.
Sounds like a threat, right?
Exactly.
In 1988, he opined, quote, "In the event that I'm reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation." Pretty startling to come from Prince Philip.
It's startling, and it's factually true, but that's the mindset of this globalist elite. And that's why they're hell-bent, and I emphasize the word hell-bent on destroying President Donald Trump. We believe in Trumpocalypse that God is giving America one last opportunity for a biblical revival. If God's people will seek the face of God, a biblical third great awakening, and some kind of divine reprieve or divine delay so America can fulfill its biblical destiny as an outreach to preach the gospel and make disciples of all nations. And I believe, even as we're talking, Doug, the ball is in our court. If we will obey God, repent and humble ourselves and do what he tells us to do, I believe God will pour out his Spirit to whatever degree he chooses to upon America. Above everything, Trumpocalypse says America is not finished. God is not finished with America yet.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, let me stop for a moment.
Sure.
Tell our viewers more about this book that we'd like to offer to you, Trumpocalypse, the subtitle, "The End Times President, A Battle Against the Globalist Elite, and the Countdown to Armageddon." So if you are interested in, from a prophetic scenario, which we think most of our viewers are interested in those things, that you would like to sort of know, where does Donald Trump fit in to this end times milieu, to use a French word, that we are in? How does he fit in? This book is great in terms of really talking about all the things that are going on. It reads so current. So it's you can tell that they worked hard to be very current and to get information in the book that's still very pertinent to what's going on in the political world. So we'd like to offer this book to you for $24.95 plus shipping and handling. We'd also like to offer to our viewers a special package. The book that was the prequel to this book, The Babylon Code, written by Paul and Troy Anderson. We'd like to offer this book for $23.95 and the package together for $44.95. These books are hardback. They're really beautifully bound, beautiful covers, and on the inside, they're really well written. So kudos to you and to Troy. So let's get back. We have still about 8 or 9 minutes in our program today. Let's get back and talk a little bit about sort of what I call sort of, from your book though, the 10 goals to destroy America.
Okay.
All right. And I'll read these
Sure.
and you can comment on them. The first one, to continually create racial conflicts. Are we seeing that today?
Absolutely. And anybody who doesn't recognize when they watch on television, whether it's the Ferguson, Missouri race riots, where it's this race riot, that's race riot, they always take seeds of racial tension, but there's an invisible hand stirring up the pot because their end game is race riots equals martial law equals police state equals some kind of totalitarian regime.
There's this new thing called Antifa.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Which stands for what? Do you know? Anti-fascism.
Yeah, I know.
Antifa, yes.
And they are the embodiment of fascism.
Exactly, which is remarkable.
And financed by the wealthiest billionaires in the world.
Yes.
Yes. Very
George-
dangerous.
George Soros.
Right.
Soros. Second point, to teach sex and homosexuality to young children.
Yes.
We seen that?
Because their goal is to literally smash God's institution of marriage, of the husband and wife and children, because that's the entire social, spiritual, and emotional framework that makes the best psychological health, spiritual health for men and women, and it's what makes a nation healthy. So they want to destroy that.
Yes, absolutely, and it plays into this whole thing of pedophilia.
Yes.
And we want to get sort of society comfortable with the idea
Yes.
of pedophilia and so forth, which we talked about in a different program recently. But that's part of the story too. How about this one? Create massive immigration to destroy national identity. You seeing that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to those watching in Europe, they are literally, the globalist elite have gone on record, we expose it in Trumpocalypse, they are literally flooding the continent of Europe with people who come from militant extremist nations, Islamic nations, for the purpose of destabilizing and destroying Europe so it'll become a global government. But they're doing the same thing in the United States because they were caught, and it's on record, of allowing at least 1 million on record illegal immigrants were allowed in to vote illegally in the election and swing the tide of this last election.
Did you all have that happen in California?
I don't want to be arrested when I get back to California.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it is so bad in California.
Right.
Okay. I mean,
Well, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote basically by what happened in California.
I believe it.
Yeah, I think it's basically mathematically correct. So I'm going to add a little bit to this one. The fourth one was promote heavy drinking. I'm going to add to that opioids.
Opioids and marijuana.
Yeah.
Ask yourself the question. Soros is a stingy, selfish, power-hungry man. Do you think he cares about your right to get high or smoke a joint? Do you think he cares for a minute? No. He wants you high and stupid because stupid people can be manipulated.
Yes.
That's marijuana, and the legalization of drugs is not so you can kill pain or have a good time or whatever. It's about keeping your brain in a fog so you can be oppressed.
Yeah. And frankly, it is about eliminating some of the population too.
Right.
Although we could just say, well, Big Pharma is just trying to make a buck. That too.
That too.
That too. So not that Big Pharma doesn't do some great things, but they're also this opioid problem is just a massive problem right now. Number 5, make people dependent on the state for benefits.
Yeah, so what they do is they choose people that they want to immigrate from countries that they know will be dependent upon the state. Notice that they're not immigrating people from former communist nations in Eastern Europe who know what a lousy deal communism is.
Right.
They want people who will be dependent upon the state. So
Well, Trump went through a thing recently about his comment about the people coming in from the S blank, whole nations. Right, and that was something he said to, I think it was Senator Durbin, and all of a sudden that came out. I was like, do you hear what he said? He basically said that we shouldn't be having immigrants come in from countries where they're underprivileged and they're not educated. That we should have people come in from Norway. What do you think Trump meant by all that? There's what the media said about it, and then there's probably what Trump meant.
I think Trump meant about it is that these people are coming in from nations that are bankrupt because they're communist, and they have no health care, and they're starving to death. But you can go to Canada, and you can talk to people in Canada who had to wait 4 months because of universal health care, 5 months, 6 months, and they're dying. And they're trying to sneak across the border into the U.S.
Absolutely. So, and this kind of ties into to another main point you've been talking about, which is number 6, control and dumb down people through the media.
Yes. Yes. And that works hand in hand with all the marijuana and other things. People are dumbed down. I mean, you've seen like the Water Show on Fox TV.
Right.
People don't even know the basics of our Constitution. They don't even know who George Washington is. These people
I teach college students,
Right.
About half of my time now.
Yeah.
And some brilliant students, but I'm surprised at the, the students that aren't at the top of the class how little they understand about really basic fundamental American history.
Yeah, right.
It's alarming. It really is.
And it's on purpose because then you can keep people in captivity.
Yeah, yeah. So education, it's interesting that when Christians came to this country,
Yes.
300 or 400 years ago, they founded colleges like
That's right.
Harvard and Yale.
Right.
Why? To educate people.
Right.
Because they knew education was crucial to democracy, but also a liberal education, which at that time meant an education that wasn't just about the Bible,
Right.
but it would study the classics about Plato and
Right.
Herodotus and so forth. That was also a good part of keeping Christianity strong.
That's right.
And we've kind of fallen away from that, haven't we? Instead, we talk about Marxism in a lot of
Right.
colleges.
And we have fallen away from that, and then nations like China, they can't produce entrepreneurs and successful people because they've been ingrained in communist education. So
Yes.
they're trying to imitate the old education in America 75 years ago when we used to educate our kids.
Yes. And the number 9 here is destroy patriotism and the concept of nationalism
Right.
and the independent nation state.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff about nationalism and its association with fascism.
Yeah.
Clear that up a little bit if you can for us.
Well, first of all, Adolf Hitler, who's considered this nationalist, was a National Socialist. So he was a socialist. Nationalism, they try to equate it with authoritarianism and totalitarianism. But nationalism, as it was intended to in the founding of America, the reason we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of the press, and all the other freedoms we have, is because we have a nationalist-based Bill of Rights and Constitution.
Yes.
The global systems, they have no freedoms. They can't defend themselves. And by the way, a lot of the manufactured chaos we're seeing going on is designed to take away one of the primary rights given to us by our founding fathers, which is the right to bear arms.
Yes.
Okay?
A Second Amendment, correct? Is it Second Amendment or Fourth Amendment? I always forget.
I forget which one
Yes,
it is,
but
too.
it's one of those very
Right.
fundamental Bill of Rights
Right.
amendments, correct? So we're just about out of time. Let me read this one very short quote from Franklin Graham, which I really thought was very perceptive. He says, in the 1930s, America had the Great Depression. Now we have the Great Deception.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, he was talking about Hollywood and the media and politicians that aren't interested in telling the truth and so forth. So we really are at this point, which the Bible talks about in the last days, the time of delusion, deception, apostasy in the church. This, I would just say to the audience, this is a wake-up call. We've talked about some tough things today, but as Christians, our duty is to stand up now.
Right.
This may be our last chance, and if we
Yes.
don't take an active interest now, it may be too late. Now's the time. Stand up. Tell others about what we've talked about today. Until next time, keep looking up.
Amen.